Weg mit dir. Ach, du lieber Gott. Hello, is there no video at the moment?
Hello everyone, Tesla. Deepesla, can you hear me?
Yes, Legmila, I can hear you.
So hello everyone, Tesla once again. I hope you all had a great day. So today is the second revised review class based on the last week release video, which is on Buddha nature, 3 basket and 3 higher trainings, and the 4 noble truths. So based on that, which we're going to have a review class today, which will lead by our Nalinda Chief Coordinator, Deepeshla. So before we start the class, we'll lead the preliminary prayer first. And I will lead the prayer in English, and Tatiana La will lead the prayer in Russian language. And we also have an interpreter, who is Diana, who will translate the English into Russian language to all the Russian participants. So we'll begin with the prayer.
Legmila, Yeah,
Yes,
before you begin, I'll just say a few words on the prayers, and then maybe you can continue with the prayers.
totally.
Welcome back, everybody. As Lekmanda mentioned, we'll do the prayers. If you've heard the earlier classes of Venerable Geshe-la mentioned in one of the class why we do prayers, and he gave explanation around few prayers we do. So, we've covered, Geshe-la has covered a couple of times, and I've also mentioned in my previous review class, don't take this as a religious thing, right? If our aspiration is to achieve infinite happiness, then Buddha is the one. Buddha is a Sanskrit word, being fully awakened. We should not take it in a religious sentiment. It's for our own benefit. And a lot of these prayers are very dense meaning. So it's not possible to explain everything ahead of time. We need teachings, we need certain background so that, I can explain, or Venerable Geshe-la can explain, any other person can explain it to you what they mean. For now, you have to kind of take it as an aspiration towards your, goal of achieving total fearlessness and infinite happiness. How? We will cover in the course slowly. Okay, so we keep this in mind while we do the prayers. Over to you, Legula. Thank you.
So let us all begin our practice by setting a proper motivation, which consists of three parts, while being mindful of both aspects, the object being visualized and the manner in which you visualize it. Refuge field in the space in front of you. Visualize Buddha Shakyamuni, His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama, and all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, or any other enlightened beings you regard with veneration. They are looking upon you with immense kindness and unconditional love, just as a mother looks upon her only child. Bodhicitta filled. Visualize seated on either side of you, your kind parents, mother on the left and father on the right. Additionally, you are accompanied by all other dear mother sentient beings, leaving none aside, and you are leading them in this practice. The purpose of practice, to manifest the Buddha nature within you, which is the ultimate source of happiness, by removing the two mental obscurations, afflictive obscurations, consisting of the afflictions of negative emotions, contaminated karmas and their corresponding active seeds, and cognitive obscurations, the subtle stains, that is, inactive latent seeds of the afflictions and contaminated karmas. Let us all recite the following verses while mentally invoking their profound meanings and associated experiences. Enthused by great compassion, you taught the immaculate Dharma to dispel all perverted views. To you, the Buddha Gautama, I pay homage. Enthused by great compassion, you taught the immaculate Dharma to dispel all perverted views. To you, the Buddha Gautama, I pay homage. Enthused by great compassion, you taught the immaculate Dharma to dispel all perverted views. To you, the Buddha Gautama, I pay homage. Taking refuge and generating bodhicitta. Sangye chuda soge chognam la chancho pado thane gyapso che thage jinso gibe chognam ge dola penje sangye doba sho. Sangye chuda soge chognam la chancho pado thane gyapso che thage jinso gibe chognam ge dola penje sangye doba sho. Sangye chuda soge chognam la chancho pado thane gyapso che thage jinso gibe chognam ge dola penje sangye doba sho. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. By my accumulations of the practice of giving and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. By my accumulations of the practice of giving and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, Dharma, and the Sangha. by my accumulations of the practice of giving and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. In dependent origination, there is no ceasing, no arising, no annihilation, no permanence, no coming, no going, no separateness, no sameness. I prostrate to the consummate Buddha, the supreme among all teachers, the one who taught this peace which is freed of elaborations. I prostrate to the mothers of the hearers, the Bodhisattvas and Buddhas, which through the knowledge of all lead hearers seeking pacification to complete peace, which through the knowledge of path causing those helping migrators to achieve the aims of the world, and through the possession of which help subduers expound a variety of teachings. The one who is transformed into the reliable guide motivated by altruism to benefit sentient beings, the teacher Sukata and protector, to you I make prostrations. The one who is eliminated the web of conceptualizations and is endowed with the divine bodies of the vast and the profound, who eternally shines forth the forever noble right place, to you the Buddha I make prostrations. Inspired by wisdom and compassion, today in the Buddha's presence, I generate the mind of full awakening to the benefit of all sentient beings. Let us all recite the essence of the dependent origination mantra along with Venerable Keshala's voice recording.
Om ye dharma hetu prabhava hetum desham tathagato yamatat desham chayo nirodha evam vati mahashramanaye swaha. Om ye dharma hetu prabhava hetum tesham tathagato yavatat tesham chayo nirodha evam vati mahashramanaye swaha. Om ye dharma hetu prabhava hetum tesham tathagato yavatat tesham chayo nirodha evam vati mahashramanaye swaha.
The meaning of the Tental Nyingbo mantra: all phenomena arise from causes. The causes are taught by the Tathagata. The cessation of the causes as well is taught by the great seer. Profound, peaceful, elaboration-free, clear light and non-composite, such is the nectar-like Dharma I have discovered. Finding no one to fathom this teaching, in silence I will retire into the woods. Beyond utterance, thought and expression is the perfection of wisdom, which is unborn, unceased, and has the nature of space. It is the object of apprehension of self-realized wisdom. To you, the mother of the Buddhas of the three times, I pay obeisance. The four seals of Buddha's teaching: all composite things are impermanent. All contaminated things are of the nature of suffering. All phenomena are of the nature of emptiness and selflessness. Transcending sorrow is peace. The Guru is the Buddha, the Guru is the Dharma, likewise the Guru is the Sangha. The Guru is the source of everything wholesome. I go for refuge in the Guru. By the sound of the vibrant drum of Dharma, you liberate all beings of miseries. I beseech you to kindly remain and give teachings until the end of the expanse of billions of aeons. The Buddha does not wash the negativities of beings, nor does he remove their miseries by his hands. His spiritual realizations are not transferred to them. It is by teaching the truth of suchness that beings are liberated. With folded hands, I beseech the Buddhas of all directions to shine the light of Dharma for all bewildered in misery's gloom. Instructions from parting from the four attachments. If you are attached to this life, you are not a spiritual practitioner. If you are attached to samsara, you have no renunciation. If you are attached to your own self-interest, you have no bodhicitta. If there is grasping, you do not have the view. We will now recite Heart Sutra along with Venerable Geshe-la's voice recording.
Deyatha Om Gati Gati Paragati Parasamgati Bodhi Swaha Deyatha Om Gati Gati Paragati Parasamgati Bodhi Swaha Tyata Om Gati Gati Paragati Parasamgati Bodhi Swaha Tyata Om Gati Gati Paragati Parasamgati Bodhi Swaha Tyatha Om Gati Gati Paragati Parasamgati Bodhi Swaha Tyatha Om Gati Gati Paragati Parasamgati Bodhi Swaha Tyatha Om Gati Gati Paragati Parasamgati Bodhi Swaha.
Thank you. I now request the Geshe-la to kindly start the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Legmala, Asiba, Tatiana. Thank you. Thank you, Setanla, Karmala, who are there also in the Taos conference hall. I'm taking this review class from my home. All right, and thank you, Dianala, for interpreting. All right, welcome back. I am people who are joining for the second time. You probably know me, but people who are joining for the first time, I'm Dipesh Thakur. Also, my refuge name is Tenzin Chokyal, given by Venerable Geshe-la's teacher. So, welcome back to this review class. As Legmala mentioned, we're going to review the two recordings that were released last Monday. So I hope you're getting familiar with the format of the course, where we are releasing recordings every week, and not that all topics will be through recordings. There will be about maybe close to about 30% of the classes planned for NCC2 will be covered live by Venerable Geshe-la. We'll have an opportunity to get live teachings also in this course, like the previous courses. Okay, all right. So what we're going to do is, first of all, before I formally start the review session, like I mentioned last time, don't consider me as a teacher, just consider me as a friend in this course. Our teacher remains Venerable Geshe-la. That should be the way this should be taken. I'm just very grateful and fortunate that I get this opportunity to review the classes so that you as a participant covering the course online, you have some touch point with Tibet House on a weekly basis. So you will feel part of the course. You'll not feel because we know many participants are joining from very remote places. There are no dharma centers. There's nothing there. So we will be very happy that this one of the commitments of His Holiness to revive the Nalanda tradition, that we were able to reach, remote parts of the world. And of course, like I mentioned, a majority of participants in this course also, NCC2, are Russian speaking. And that's thanks to the Russian students of Venerable Geshe-la, the Save Tibet Foundation. They're really working hard to make sure more and more people get connected. So a big thank you to them. And of course, that doesn't mean that the non-Russian speaking participants are not important. Everyone is important. But in terms of just number, the number of participants are, maximum from the Russian speaking in our course, And it's a big group that we have. We have over 1,400 participants now, and 800 plus are, and close to maybe 900 are from Russia, Russian speaking. Okay. All right. Given that the background, let me know if you can share the PPT. And when we release today's recording for the following week, we've also released this PPT with Legmana will share. Okay. So basically, let's go to the next slide. This is today's, let's jump over. Yeah. So the two classes that we're going to review. In the previous week, we released two classes, and there was one first class which Geshe-la took live. So we reviewed three classes, and in the last week, there was first part of this particular topic, Buddha nature, two goals, two obstacles, and two kinds of practitioners. And you will see part 2 of 2, like in the first bullet point. Part 2 of 2 means that this particular topic, Venerable Geshe-la taught in 2 parts. So we're covering the second part today. Okay, and then there's a separate topic within the same recording, 3 baskets, 3 higher trainings, part 1 of 1, which means Geshe-la covered it in 1 part. And then the next bullet point is the 4 seals and the 4 noble truths of Buddha's teachings, where Geshe-la taught it in 5 parts. So this is, if you get a little confused about part 2 of 2, part 1 of 1, what does this mean? This is what it means. Okay, let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, so what we'll do before we jump onto what Venerable Geshe-la covered in this particular class, I will revise very quickly, what we covered in the previous week. Now, one important point I want to raise is that most of you who are joining such courses, majority of you have your own, life to lead. You have a job, or you have some work that you have to take care of. You have a family. Many of you are taking care of, your children, or you have other responsibility. Many of you are students doing your studies. So, of course, managing your own life and doing such a course can be very challenging for some of you. And some of you, I personally know, are struggling with many health issues or health issues in the family. And some of them are very serious issues like terminal illness and things like that. So I truly rejoice that having such, circumstances, yet you've embarked on this journey. So I really congratulate all of you for that. But at the same time, let's be practical that managing time, managing life, managing course, it can be a challenge. So I'd like to give few advices. If they're helpful, please use them. Number one, let's say you belong to a category where you have sufficient time. Now, what do we have? We have 2 recordings. We have transcripts related to those 2 recordings, and we have a review class. These are 3 things happening in 1 week. So if you have good time that you can cover all 3, then my recommendation would be cover all 3. Okay, and let's say, no, I do not have so much of time. I have less time. Then I would say at least listen to Geshe-la's classes and use transcripts for revision. And you say, no, I even have less time. Then, practically speaking, let's say it's a 2-hour class and it's, let's say, a 30-page transcript. To read a transcript, it takes less time to then listen to the recording, right? So you can try it yourself. Now, this may not apply to the Russian-speaking participants because the transcripts are not available in the Russian-speaking, because The Safe Tibet team and the admin team of Russia, they've done a fantastic job to arrange interpreter, translate the recordings. So we've not reached a stage where the transcripts are available, but at least to the English-speaking participant, this advice might be useful. Okay. So because Venerable Geshe-la is a primary teacher, don't think that, okay, I can skip classes and go to the review class directly. 4-hour, 4.5-hour class, review class is just 1.5 hour. Let's not take shortcuts, right? So let's think like this, that let's say if I have a severe bacterial infection and I'm supposed to like take a 10-day antibiotic course and I have to eat my medicine 3 times a day, right? So I have to eat 30 tablets. Now don't jump and say that, okay, you know what, I'll just eat 1 tablet every day and the infection will go away. It doesn't work like that, right? So of course, doing a course and managing time can be challenging, but to a certain extent, you can be smart enough to manage your time. But beyond that, if you cut corners, you're not going to get the benefit. That's the whole idea. Okay. So what I'm doing is, why I said this, because I do understand for some of you, you're joining the course late, and that's perfectly fine. So I'll just quickly revise what we covered, important points in the previous 2 recordings and the first class. So that's the first point in my PPT. So at least gives you some base, and then we go into what the recordings we released last week. Okay. So what we covered, most important, like I mentioned before the prayers, don't take this as a course, as any other ism, right? There are so many isms in the world, right? Our lives are complicated enough. We don't need to complicate it further, right? So Venerable Geshe-la says this very often. The agenda of this course is to be kind to yourself. And just being kind is not sufficient, because if you're just kind, then also you can get into trouble. For example, like there's a small kid who says, I don't want to go to school. I just want to play in the park. I want to, now these days, kids don't go to park, right? These days, kids play on gadgets. So maybe my example is obsolete. I need to change the example that, kids want to play on the gadget, laptop, mobile phone, tablet, some gadget, they want to play games. And they come to the parents and say, no, I don't want to go to school. And I just want to play on gadgets. Why? Because I like it. I'll be happy. So what is the meaning of kind? When you're kind, you're trying to make yourself happy. You're trying to reduce your suffering. Is it wise for the parents or whoever is the guardian of the child to say, no, don't go to school. You can play the whole day. Whatever you want to do. Of course, it's not wise, right? So you have to kind of think about this, that what does it mean by be wisely kind? So that's the agenda. Be kind to yourself and be wisely kind. Why? Because, each one of you have to reflect at your level. There's all sentient beings, they don't want suffering, no matter what the gender is, no matter what the nationality is, no matter what the background is, no matter what likings, dislikings they may carry, doesn't matter. Everybody wants 0% suffering and everybody wants 100% happiness. This is something that we have to very sincerely, it's my humble request that you have to sincerely try and reflect on it. Does this echo with you? This particular point will help you tremendously when you face challenges, when you face complicated situations. If you are clear about this point, then at least you will have this mental clarity that I don't want 0% suffering. I want 0% suffering and I want 100% happiness. Right? And we, Legmanda, when he was leading prayers, he played a recording of a mantra, Om Ye Dharma, where Buddha taught this, that all phenomena like suffering, happiness, they arise from their respective causes. If I want total fearlessness and I want infinite happiness, then it has their respective causes. For example, if I am that small kid who wants to play on the gadget all the time, and then when I grow up, I'll be in trouble. I'll not have a job, I'll not be qualified, so I'm not preparing for the future. Okay? So these are the two aspirations which cut across gender, which cut across nationality, which cut across financial status, whatever. You know, all sentient beings, not only human beings. We're talking about all sentient beings. Okay. So, you know, then natural question can arise that I want happiness and I don't want suffering, yet suffering comes in my life, yet suffering comes in my life of my loved ones. Why is that so? Because, you know, we all have the seed of perfection within us, but it's actually obscured, and obscurations are put into two broad categories. One is a gross one is a subtle one. So the two obscuration, which is the point C of point 1C, two obscurations, afflictive obscurations and cognitive obscuration, right? And then, you know, there are two goals that when we say that, okay, everybody wants to achieve, you know, total fearlessness, it sounds okay in a day-to-day language, you're conversing with other people, it sounds perfectly fine. But there's a technical label associated with it. When we say somebody who's just wants to achieve total fearlessness, technically it's referred to as nirvana. Nirvana is a Sanskrit word, and in English, often it's translated as personal liberation. Okay, personal liberation is also kind of a liberation from all forms of suffering, but it's not like full enlightenment. Full enlightenment is Buddhahood in Sanskrit, or full awakening. You know, these are the words that you will see in different translations. And then there are two kinds of practitioners that we covered, you know, in the last classes: personal liberation seekers and the Mahayanist. And within personal liberation seekers, again, there are two divisions, right? That we'll cover later, but at least you should know, you know, and we're not going to divide further. Personal liberation seekers, they're also called Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas. Shravakas are, it's a Sanskrit words, often translated as hearers, people who hearers, you know, and Pratyeka Buddhas are called solitary realizers. Okay, and the people who seek Buddhahood, which is infinite happiness, that is removal of all kinds of obscuration, they follow the path which is called Mahayana. Maha means great in Sanskrit, and Yana means a vehicle, you know, a vehicle, right? So it's called Mahayana, and people who follow Mahayana are called Mahayanist or Buddhahood seekers. Okay, and this I mentioned earlier, every sentient being has the seed of perfection, you know, which is Buddha nature. This is something quite a profound topic, but it's a very important topic. So in NCC, we covered like briefly what Buddha nature is, something that we can start thinking about, right? That, okay, you know, I also have the seed of perfection. And like Geshe-la mentioned in the first class, you know, don't accept things easily, don't reject things easily. Just because you're learning in this class, we also have to learn this ability to question things in a nice way, that, you know, there's an improvement within inside you. There are people who will question for the sake of like arguing, right? Maybe you belong to a category where, you know, you don't know how to ask questions, right? But this is something that this is a skill that we need to acquire, you know, and this is highly, highly encouraged in this Nalanda tradition. Trying to be objective. Trying to be objective means that we keep our emotions. One connotation is we keep our emotions aside and say, okay, right? For example, I can say 2 plus 3 is equal to 7. I can say that. And you can listen to it. And then you can inquire, what do you mean by that? How do you mean, how can you prove 2 plus 3 is equal to 7? Right? So, but first thing is to be able to listen and then be able to replicate it. That 2 plus 3 equal to 7. That was said in the class. You agree or disagree, that's a secondary point. Right? So similarly, this is quite a profound point, that we all have the seed of perfection. And why it's a profound point? You know, there are many people in our course who are from a background of modern psychology. And of course, no offense to you. In and then medical sciences, psychology, psychiatry is extremely helpful to many people. But end of the day, if let's say I have anger issues and I go to a counselor, I think I'm fairly confident if they're not exposed to this Nalanda tradition or this kind of, they'll say that, okay, you have anger, you have to manage it. They will never say that you can uproot the anger completely from your mind, right? It's a quite a different paradigm shift that, we are talking about something which we already have a seed of perfection and we have to work towards like manifesting it, versus like saying, no, I have these, I'm a jealous person, I'm an angry person, I have this problem, that problem, this is who I am, right? Versus, of course, we start from where you are. Fine, this is who I am. But is there a way that I can improve myself? Then to what extent I can improve myself? Then can I completely remove it? There's no trace of it left in my mind. And Buddha taught, yes, it's possible. Of course, it's possible. Okay, and this is something we need to get a conviction, and it's quite a powerful, psychology that if we, and it's just not, he did not say things for the sake of saying, these are true things. We have to discover how. That's the idea. Okay, all right. So that's very, very important. Every sentient being has this seed of perfection of Buddha nature within us, right? And since many of you are coming, many of you are joining NCC, that you have your other teachers, you following other traditions. In some traditions, you will also come across, you're already a Buddha. They'll mention that. You're already perfect. They'll mention that. Of course, that's a separate style of teaching. What they're saying is not wrong, but we have to understand the connotation. When we do this kind of a course, it doesn't mean that we stick to like what is being taught here. If you're learning something other places, you should be able to reconcile what we are learning. If you're learning something else, if you find it contradictory, you should be able to reconcile. And if you can't reconcile, you can ask questions, no problem. Okay, so there the connotation is like, if many people maybe are from the sports background, right? In sports, there is this training where you actually like visualize that you've already achieved it, and then you train for it, right? So I'm giving quite a loose example from the sports background. For example, there's a sprint runner, who wants to achieve 100 meters. Initially the person is clocking 10.5, 10.6 seconds for 100 meters. The person says, I want to achieve like 10 seconds below. The person says, I've already achieved it. They start telling themselves. And then they go for the run. Then they go for the practice. And the sports psychologists say that this is quite a powerful, way that what the result you want, you start thinking you've already achieved it and then train for it. So there, the presentation is already a Buddha. When they're mentioning that, it's a different connotation, right? Here, we are saying you have a seed of perfection within you. That seed is not manifested. When the seed becomes manifested, then you become a Buddha. And manifested not like a sprout, manifested in a full form, full bloom form. Okay, a seed of an apple is not apple. All right. Okay, so that's something that I wanted to bring up, that if you hear other teachings, then don't get confused about it. Okay, so in the class, Gishla mentioned about this beautiful example which is given by Arya Nagarjuna in a text called Dharmadhatu Stava. This is a Sanskrit word which basically is translated as in praise of the ultimate expanse. Okay, so there Arya Nagarjuna speaks about, and often this is another side point, that you would see these Nalanda masters, there's an epithet, there's a prefix like Arya Nagarjuna, Acharya Chandrakirti, Acharya Dignaga. You will see a prefix, right? So this particular culture, there's a sense of reverence, there's a sense of a great amount of respect given, right? So these great masters are not like our friends that we can address them with the first name, although There are certain cultural backgrounds that you come from where it's okay to address people with the first name. But in this culture, this is like a way of giving reverence and keeping that sense of respect with them, seeing them in that light, in a respectful light. So you will often see, like in my slide I mentioned, by Arya Nagarjuna, and we will learn what does it mean by Arya. That we'll learn later in subsequent classes. Okay, so Arya Nagarjuna, in his text in Praise of Ultimate Expanse, he gives an example that how do I know? In fact, in one of the recordings, somebody did ask this question: that how do we know? Like Gishla gave the example that if you squeeze a handful of sunflower seeds and squeeze a handful of sand, oil comes out from the sunflower seeds, not from sand. Right? This is the example. So we all have Buddha nature like the sunflower seeds. Then somebody can ask this question: how do I know that within me there is something like the sunflower seed and not something like the sand? It's a good question. It's a valid question, and one should explore. Right. So this is one of the questions that was asked in the class, and Geshe-la addressed it by quoting Arya Nagarjuna. Let's say there's a very bright light and it's covered by a pitcher, and we are just seeing the outside. We have no idea there's a bright light because it's fully covered by the pitcher. So Arya Nagarjuna says that if you want, you can poke a small hole. When you poke a hole, a beaming light will come out, right? And then if you break the pitcher, the light beams forth in all 10 directions, right? So again, this might be a new thing in the Buddhist literature, Buddhist philosophical text. This is often mentioned 10 directions. So you have the 4 directions: north, south, east, west, and additional 4 intermediary: northeast, southeast, like that. So total 8, so you visualize them like in a horizontal line, these 8, and top and bottom. So that makes it 10, right? So the light beams forth in all 10 directions. Okay, so that's what Arya Nagarjuna says, that when you break the pitcher. So here in this example, the pitcher represents our obscurations, right? So when you get rid of the obscurations, this Buddha nature will start beaming through. So it's a beautiful example. Often it will come in the text. Okay, and then Geshe-la explained in the class there are 2 types of Buddha nature. In the presentation, this is one thing that you would find a great advantage of joining such a course, that you will learn these technical concepts which are not possible that, say, you go for a talk, some teacher comes to your town, there's a dharma center nearby, or you listen to some talk on YouTube or any other, publicly available social media. These technical points will not be covered there until unless you formally join a course and, somebody explains it to you. So this is a great advantage. But when technical concepts are explained, it may be overwhelming for some of you, So, and these are repeated, so don't worry. You take it, slowly and try and understand whatever is being said in the class and in the review class. And when things are repeated over and over again, you will get comfortable. That's how it will work. Okay, all right. So in every class, you will find some technical concepts, and that's the whole idea, right? Why join a formal course, if it was just a general talk, right? So some people can like, okay, Buddhism means that they will like talk nicely, and maybe some teachers crack some jokes, which happens. Yes, it's part of their style of teaching, right? And then, okay, I'll have a nice time in the class, and then the class is over. Of course, yeah, many classes may be like that, but then there are technical concepts also. Okay, so be mentally prepared about it. So again, going back to the slide, Buddha nature types: proliferating and natural Buddha nature. What do they mean? For example, maybe rather than the example, maybe I can be a little direct. Okay, so we all have a mind, and we will learn later when we do Buddhist psychology what is mind according to Buddhist psychology, right? We all have a mind which, if we get rid of the obscurations, slowly, this mind becomes more and more developed. So this particular mind that we have currently, which has the potential to become Buddha's mind, that is called Buddha's, that is called proliferating Buddha nature. Proliferating in English means to be able to, one connotation is what can expand, proliferate. It can expand. Our mind can expand and become Buddha's mind. It can become as expansive as Buddha's mind, right? And, and natural Buddha nature is, this is something that we will cover. One of the topics that we have in a course is emptiness, which Keshla will teach directly. Will not be using recordings from the previous courses. Keshla will teach all of us in NCC2 emptiness. So the emptiness is the ultimate reality. This is again a very profound question. What is ultimate reality? This is an extremely profound question. There could be, all different traditions which present ultimate reality, even like physics trying to explore that what is the ultimate particle, let's say from particle physics perspective. What is that it exists ultimately, right? Going back to our basic aspiration that, we want total fearlessness and infinite happiness. And what is that is blocking us? Of course, one presentation is, afflictive obscuration and cognitive obscuration. Another presentation that even His Holiness uses quite often is that there are two primary factors. There's an extra self-centeredness in all of us. I'm not judging anybody. I'm included in that. There's extra self-centeredness in all of us who have not reached this goal of total fearlessness and infinite happiness. We have extra self-centeredness and we are disconnected from reality, how things exist. These are the two factors. And it's extremely important that, if we get convinced about it, then we are opening like a big gate for ourselves, for our own happiness, that we are embarking on, right? So this natural Buddha nature is the ultimate reality of our mind. What is this ultimate reality? What is emptiness? That we have to study separately. But I'll surely mention, because emptiness in English can give a connotation, it's empty, it means nothing. No, emptiness is not nothingness. Emptiness refers to a specific way things exist ultimately, right? This is something that we have to explore and we have to learn, we have to reflect. So natural Buddha nature is emptiness of the proliferating Buddha nature. That currently my mind is a defiled mind, but this defiled mind has this capability of becoming a Buddha's mind. This defiled mind's ultimate reality is the natural Buddha nature. And your mind, my mind, the emptiness of your mind, my mind, and emptiness of Buddha's mind, there is no difference. There's no difference at all, right? And we'll cover this later, what this means, but we'll cover this later, okay? But right now in the class, Keshla mentioned these points: proliferating Buddha nature and natural Buddha nature, okay? Regular, let's go over to the next slide. I'm not sure if this is the correct slide. One second, Regular. Yeah, okay, this is the correct slide. Okay, all right. So yeah. Okay, if you can switch to the slideshow, Regular. Okay, thank you. So, this is another rhetorical debate that Gishla raised and tried to address in the class. Can we say being kind and being wisely kind can lead us to being altruistic? First, maybe many of you, English is also not my first language. So for many of you, this word altruistic, what does it mean? Altruism means that, being able to take responsibility, right? Altruism is like taking responsibility on your own shoulders, So for example, let's say, I'm creating a hypothetical scenario that, you have somebody close by you, and the person you are the only person there, and the person suddenly collapses and needs some medical help, right? So then the responsibility falls on you. Maybe you call whatever your emergency number in your country, or an ambulance, or a doctor, or maybe you can do something. If you are trained yourself to help, you will help, right? So altruism is taking responsibility, right? So Gishla raised this point. Can we say being kind and being wisely kind can lead us to being altruistic? Like, it sounds a little contradictory, right? I'm being kind to myself. I'm not thinking about others. Do you see the difference, right? When you're saying taking responsibility, you're talking about taking responsibility of others, right? Gishla said, don't worry, like, this is the way it is, that when we are at initial stage, when we try, in many classes, not in this class, but Gishla has mentioned, like, we are like a sapling, a small sapling. So when we are like a sapling, we need to protect ourselves, because we ourselves, are very weak. So, so as we grow and we grow into a big tree, then nothing can affect us. Then we become a source of shade, source of fruits for others, right? So these kind of questions you can also ask, that when you're saying, being kind to oneself and be wisely kind to oneself, but then, you're talking about compassion, you're talking about being kind to others. How does this work, right? So this is how it works, that initially, we're like a small sapling. We have to kind of develop ourselves. Then we have to increase our ability to be able to be helpful to others. Why? Not that I want to become great, you want to become great. No. It is linked to our own happiness, right? So at some stage when you learn, many of you, for you, it's very, very initial stage, but you also may not know what, in the class it's being spoken about mind. What is mind? You may have some idea about it, but not very clear. Then when we are able to watch our own mind, then you have to see directly your own self. You can see that when you're angry or when you're upset with somebody versus when you're being kind to someone, which one is more beneficial for you? If you're being kind to someone and yet you're not able to do, but you are the first beneficiary, your mind is the first beneficiary. Okay, so this is another very important point. And then Gishla mentioned about, like I said, this emptiness. Emptiness is an object. Wisdom of emptiness is the mind which is cognizing the object. Wisdom of emptiness. And if we want, a permanent solution to our problems, then the only possibility is wisdom of emptiness. This is a very big statement made in the class, and I'm repeating it. Again, we can go back to the same, one verse Krishna mentioned, where Buddha himself said, bhikshus and the wise men, just as a goldsmith, checks the purity of gold by cutting, rubbing, and burning, you should test my words and don't take it on face value, right? This is what Buddha said. So this is the medicine, right? This is the medicine for all our problems, wisdom of emptiness, right? So it has the power to remove both afflictive and cognitive obscurations from the root. One is like you can suppress it, right? Like in the last review class I mentioned, let's say if I have a bacterial infection in my stomach and I have a headache, I can take a headache medicine. It will relieve my headache for a few hours, but it's not addressing the problem at the root. So similarly, there are so many other things which will not address the problem at the root. You may find some respite from your suffering, from your problems, but if you want respite for a long term and a permanent solution, then it's only wisdom of emptiness, right? So again, that's very important. And then we move on to the next point, which is motivation to remove, afflictive obscuration. It's technically called renunciation, and we'll cover what renunciation is. But in modern day world, many people, they're not incorrect. You would often find people saying that, oh, one should practice self-compassion, right? It's correct, of course, but technically it's not correct. In a loose language, it's correct. Compassion is always directed to the other beings. If you are talking about self-compassion in the loose sense, then technically it should be only about renunciation. Renunciation is a motivation that you want to get rid of all your suffering. So that motivation to remove afflictive obscuration is called renunciation. To remove both afflictive and cognitive obscuration, it's called bodhicitta. This is one way of presenting. Bodhicitta is a mind, like, what we were reciting in prayers, may I become Buddha for sake of all sentient beings, right? This is bodhicitta, the mind which aspires to become Buddha for sake of all sentient beings. And again, Buddha is not in a religious sense a fully awakened person, a person which has perfected all, qualities. Okay. So, so all these 3 points that you, and one of the most important points that people may not be able to connect the dots in this slide or in the class is that one cannot have bodhicitta without renunciation. Renunciation is your bedrock, is the foundation. If somebody wants to develop bodhicitta, it's necessary to have renunciation, right? So you have renunciation, you have bodhicitta, and then, if you want to become Buddha, how? You have to remove the obscuration. What helps to remove obscuration permanently? Wisdom of emptiness. So these 3, renunciation, bodhicitta, and wisdom of emptiness, they're referred as the 3 principal paths. In our prayer book that we were leading, there's one particular text by Lama Tsongkhapa. It's called 3 Principal Aspects. It's also translated 3 Principal Aspects, 3 Principal Paths. So this is mentioned. Okay. So, and then this is not just like, okay, I've learned about emptiness, and then you attend like few teachings, and then you say, okay, now I've understood emptiness. It doesn't work like that. This wisdom should be very steady, and this wisdom should be very sharp. There is a, we will cover some examples, but this is like very, very important point. Okay, very steady and very sharp wisdom. Okay, this Keshla mentioned, and he did not go into details. This is another very important point coming, which is mind and brain are separate. If people are from the modern cognitive sciences, neuroscientists, or anybody like that, so in the neurosciences, there's a common presentation where it says mind or consciousness is an emergent property of the brain. Brain dies, consciousness dies. But what we will learn logically, not like a dogma, not like, okay, no, this you have to accept. No, with reasons, this will be proven that mind and brain are separate. It's a very important point. This will come later in other classes also, but Geshe-la did mention in this class. So the important point is transformation happens at the mind level, mental level. We're not transforming our body. We're transforming the way we see things, way we experience things. We are transforming our aspirations, right? Okay. The review class time is a little less. Otherwise, I could go in a little more detail, about this. But right now, let's stick to, if we have time, I'll try and cover later. But for now, we stick to what was covered in the class. Okay. So we basically are building a background to the next part, which is 3 baskets and 3 higher trainings. We're building a background to that. That's what Geshe-la was doing at this stage. Okay. So actions, like action also is, you may have heard, karma, right? Karma works, and we get very strange ideas if you're not exposed to this. Many of us, including myself, when I was not exposed to that, very strange ideas about what karma is. Karma is nothing. Literally, if you translate, it's action. So action for anybody can be at 3 levels. Physical, that I'm moving my hand, it's physical, right? Verbal, I'm speaking, and then I'm thinking, right, at the mental level, right? So karma, you can classify the various ways of classifying karma. One way is like you can divide into physical, verbal, and mental, right? So, and then there are corresponding trainings of the mind related to these 3. right? So let's say, you know, if you go out for grocery shopping, or let's say even if you do online shopping for groceries, it's not possible that, you know, you'll not think about it and automatically your hand will go to your tablet or mobile phone or a laptop, and then you'll say, I want to order groceries. Of course, you will think about it. There's a mind behind your action. And this mind that I'm talking about, which will come again and again in our classes, this is very empirical. What does it mean by empirical? That you can experience it yourself and you can validate it. It's not like, okay, you know, in certain systems like we talk about, there's something called subconscious. There's something called superconscious. There's no way for me to validate what subconscious is or superconscious is. Doesn't mean what they're saying is right and doesn't mean what they're saying is wrong. I have no idea about it. Right? But I can validate that, okay, if I have to order groceries, there's something within me that I have to say, okay, I have to order groceries. There's some thinking going on. And that thinking triggers the action. Would you agree? Right? Is it possible that, you know, sometimes we do say, right? Does it happen to anybody? Maybe we can just raise hands that, you know, you go somewhere, let's say within your house, and then you open your cupboard and then like, why am I here? Has it happened? No? Yes? Right? That you go to some place within a house, or you go to the kitchen and you went with something that, okay, I have to pick up something. When you go there and you forget. Right? So you went there. Of course, this week all in day-to-day language, like mindless. I was mindless about it. Right? But technically, you had some intention that you went to the kitchen, or, you know, you've kept something and you forgot where you kept something. This also happens, right? And you kept something and you forgot, right? So a side topic about this mindfulness, right? In one of the texts, it's mentioned. If you know, Buddha Shakyamuni's personal attendant was his own cousin, Venerable Ananda. Most of you would have heard, you know, who are following a little bit of Buddhism, you would have heard about Venerable Ananda. You know, if you've not, if you're joining for the first time, Buddha Shakyamuni's personal attendant, you know, for first few years, Buddha Shakyamuni did not have an attendant, but later part of, you know, when he was a Buddha, the personal attendant was Venerable Ananda. Right? So it is said in one of the texts that Venerable Ananda's memory was so wonderful that, let's say you have 65,000 pages. I'm just giving a rough number. I can give you the exact number in the text later, but something like this is mentioned. 65,000 pages of A4 sheet printed on both sides. Right? So how big would this be? 65,000. It's like quite massive, including the, you know, commas, full stops, any kind of annotations. So we have the 65,000 with this huge amount of text. Venerable Ananda could replicate it without error. Right? This is kind of mind-boggling. Right? So now going back to this example that I was saying, that, you know, you go to the kitchen and you forget, why was I here? Or, you know, where did I keep my car keys? Where are my keys? Where did I keep this? You know, it happens to me so often. Right? So anyway, so still doesn't mean that I'm operating mindlessly. That is my point I'm saying. Still doesn't mean. Right? I had the intention to go to the kitchen, maybe pick up something, and then I go and open the fridge and I forget, why was I here? Completely forget. So that action is also driven by a mind. That is the point I'm saying. Okay, so actions are physical, verbal, and mental, and corresponding trainings of the mind are related to these actions. Okay. So, and if we analyze, we are very reactionary. Most of us with the untrained mind, we are very reactionary. And when we are reactionary, we get into a lot of trouble. Even if we are not interacting with others, you know, you're alone, somebody says something which you find hurtful, the mind keeps repeating it. Or you had some particular, you know, event which was little hurtful or quite hurtful in the past, mind repeats it. Right? You don't want it, but it keeps repeating it and you don't want it, right? So this happens. So we all want, a mind which is like happy, yet we are into this repetitive things. Okay. So next slide, please. Regular. So actions, they are driven by physical actions, verbal actions, and mental actions. There's a mind behind it. There's your thinking behind it. There's some intention behind it. You may notice it, you may not notice it. It may appear for certain things very spontaneous, but it's not possible without a mind. If it was possible without a mind, then dead bodies should be also able to function the way you are functioning. There's something which is within a living person. There's a sentience which allows all this, right? Right. So like I said, we are reactionary, and that gets us into trouble. What we are trying to do is we're trying to not have an untrained mind dictate us. We want a mind which listens to us, right? Okay. So so then this question is asked. So maybe I can throw open, this kind of question. Let's have a small interaction that which of these actions, physical, verbal, or mental, which you think anybody, they can raise their hands or virtual hands, is easier to control? Which one is easier to control? Physical, verbal, or mental? Okay, I see a hand. Valeria. Valeria? You'll have to unmute, Valeria. Yeah, you're unmuted. Yeah. Oh, you muted again.
Да.
Yeah, now I can hear you. Yes.
Здравствуйте, Дипишла. Нам проще контролировать физические действия, затем то, что мы говорим, и только потом то, что мы думаем.
Okay, Diana, can you please repeat? I switched my channel a little later. Can you please repeat? Yeah.
Меня...
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Diana. Thank you, Valeria. Okay, I hope I'm pronouncing Valeria, your name, properly. So okay, all right. So yeah, Valeria is right. I like to share an anecdote. From I used to work in a corporate world, and related to what Valeria said. There was a colleague of mine. He had this habit of saying, which is in fact a good habit, but if it's in uncontrolled form, good habits can also lead to problems. For everything, he would say, very good, very good. Like, you call him, how are you doing? Very good. How was the day yesterday? Very good, very good. Almost like spontaneously, he would say, very good, very good. So there was another colleague of mine. He didn't report to work. We were a small consulting firm, about 15, 16 people. So we were worried. So they were good friends. When we asked this colleague, why don't you call him and ask, why is he not reported for work? What happened? He's quite punctual, So he called, and the other person on the line said, I could not come because my mother passed away. And this person immediately said, very good, very good. Right? So it's quite inappropriate. And he is one of the soft-spoken person I've ever met in my corporate life as a consultant. Extremely soft-spoken person, extremely kind, right? Of course, he never had the intention to say very good on somebody's death. Never had that intention. But just out of habit, he said, and then immediately started apologizing. Greatly, and the other person got very, very upset, right? So this is a very good example that I try and reflect sometimes, that sometimes when the mind is reactionary, habitual, you can hurt somebody so badly, right? And of course, they remained friends. Later on, he apologized, and this person knew him for many, many years. He knew that he says very good all the time. So, so I wanted to bring this as an anecdote. But yeah, physically, let's say, if they were together, if this other person is angry, he's not going to hit him. Right? He may have said, what are you saying? Very good, very good. My mother has passed away. He may have got angry. Right? And then there are certain people I know, they're extremely good in not reacting verbally. But if you could read their mind is hyperactive. Their mind is hyperactive. They appear calm. They're not reacting. In their mind, so much is going on. Right? Okay. Right. So this is something that we can easily, kind of agree to. That yes, the physical is easier to control versus the verbal. Verbal is easier to control versus the mental. Mental is the hardest. And Buddha was extremely practical. So when he created the rules for the monastic, he did not create any rules for the mind. He created rules for the physical and the verbal. Okay. And this is one of the reasons that I can today say, okay, you know what, I will not say angry words to anybody, right? I can still attempt to that, but in the mind, maybe those thoughts can arise. Quite possible. Okay, Lekanda, slide please. So this is something that we can all validate and we can agree to, and if you don't, during the question answer session, you can ask me that no, I don't agree to this, and you can bring up your question if you have any questions related to this. So this takes us to the 3 higher trainings. Again, there are technical words coming, and these technical words often in the lot of teachings you will hear these words. So we're putting the Sanskrit words also. And I'm not good with Tibetan, so I'm not putting the Tibetan words, but often in the class, in the recording, Geshe-la will speak the Tibetan. There are many participants who are learning Tibetan. So Geshe-la, for their benefit, gives the technical word in Tibetan because he's translating into English, right? The other translator may use a different translation. So if you know the technical word in Sanskrit and in Tibetan, and you're attending the other teachings, you will get benefited greatly. You will not get confused with the English translation. Okay, so there are 3 trainings which are called higher trainings. Why? Again, we can link it back to the same thing. I'm looking for total fearlessness and infinite happiness, right? So for that, I need to train my mind, right? So my actions, all my actions, physical action, verbal action, all they're driven by my mind. So if my mind is what I can train very well and remains under my control, that's the whole idea. So we are breaking it this down that, okay, whatever is easier, we do that first, then the little more difficult, then the most difficult one. So Sheel is one of the higher trainings, which is ethical discipline. Samadhi is the meditative concentration. Pragya, or the wisdom. If you remember the Sanskrit, it's fine. If you don't remember the Sanskrit, no issues, but at least know the concept. Okay, and know the English labels, and for the Russian speaking, the equivalent, the Russian labels. Know them. The concept is most important. Okay, right? So you have these 3 higher trainings, and you have the 3 baskets. 3 baskets are 3 containers. The container has the contents. You have 1 container, and you have the contents. You have this container 2, contents. Container 3, contents. So that's how it is. 3 baskets is also called Tripitaka. In the Pali tradition, you will hear these words. Vinaya is the subject matter, Vinaya is the container or the basket whose subject matter is Sheel. Sutra is the subject matter whose Sutra is the container or the basket whose subject matter is Samadhi. Abhidharma is the container whose subject matter is Pragya or wisdom. Okay. So it's a presentation you will come across. So Buddha's teachings can be subsumed in like this: 3 higher trainings, 3 baskets. Now there's an important word coming. Now there was a very beautiful example given in the class. Like, you're trying to study. Let's say in olden times, you just have candle. that you want to study something, you want to read something, right? So you want to read something, then you need a bright candle so that you can read properly. But if the wind is blowing, the light is flickery, you will not be able to study. It will be very disturbing, right? So similarly, if you want to get rid of these obscurations from the root, you need the wisdom. This wisdom should be bright and steady, right? So for the steadiness, we can divide into two. One is what is related to the shield or ethical discipline. That training is restricted to the physical and the verbal. Like Valeria said, that is easier to control the physical and verbal. So the physical and verbal is part of the ethical discipline, right? And that is Vinaya. So when somebody becomes a monastic, they follow Vinaya, right? So there are Vinaya texts, they're often, these rules are laid out, and they were like, what I would say, gradually evolved, these rules. It's not like Buddha became Buddha and then he wrote the Vinaya rules. There was a Sangha that formed slowly. There were elders in Sangha, they reported problems to Buddha, and these things slowly evolved, right? So, for example, one of my teachers, he was a monk earlier. So he told me one particular rule was like during Buddha's time, there was often, and Buddha encouraged, like, if that, the monks, monastics would go for alms begging. They would go and beg for food. Why? So Buddha said that's a great interface between the society and the people who are following to become, enlightened. So when you interact, you become friends. People have problems, they share with you. You can share your wisdom with them. So this was a design that Buddha had in mind. Buddha wanted to benefit everybody. And then people will invite, these monastics that I have, my son got married, or this happened, this festival, why don't you come? They invite for lunch, and then monastics will go. So this is a slightly funny story. So there was a monastic who was a little heavy, and he went for one of these lunches, right? This is one of my teachers who told me the story, and he sat on a table or a chair, which was probably a little weak. The chair broke. He sat on it and the chair broke, right? And then this was reported to Buddha, that, somebody, whoever the householder was, that, hey, your monastic came and they broke my chair. The person was upset. So in the Vinaya also, this kind of a rule is written, that if you're heavy and then if you go for lunch somewhere, be very careful, sit like graciously. So these kind of rules are also there. And they're very serious rules also written, right? So again, this is training of the body, right? You're going for lunch, be mindful where you're sitting, how you're sitting, have a look, right? So I'm just giving an example that Vinaya is a set of teachings by, not only Buddha, there are commentaries which are subject matter as shield, which is controlling the physical action and the verbal action, right? Sutra is samadhi. Like we said, light should be very steady. Okay, all right. And sutra has various connotations used by non-Buddhist. Like sutra is words used by non-Buddhist also. Sutra has one connotation where anything is taught by the Buddha. That is one connotation. And one connotation is like sutra and tantra. You may have heard about this word tantra. We'll cover later. But sutra as opposed to tantra. And then what we're learning, sutra in the three baskets. Okay. Right, let's move on to the next slide. I'm running behind schedule. I just have about 15-20 minutes to cover the next part. Okay, so we'll try and cover quickly. So now we completed the first topic, which was or the second topic, Buddha nature, and the topic covered. Now we are starting a new topic, which is 4 seals and the 4 noble truths. And before 4 seals, Geshe-la started with 4 noble truths, right? So here the emphasis given in these teachings is not about like intellectual learning. We are here if you're looking for happiness and if you're looking to remove your suffering, there should be an inner transformation. And just intellectual learning is not sufficient at all. Of course, if you belong to category that I want to learn only intellectually in this course, you are also most welcome. But then you're not getting the full benefit out of it, right? So that's a very important point. Then Geshe-la in the class covered what does it mean by going to refuge to triple gem. Okay, this I think I'll cover in the next review class because I need a little more time. I don't want to rush through. This is a very important point. What it means to go into refuge into triple gem, why we do it, right? And then, linking the first point that this inner transformation that we're talking about, it has 3 stages. One stage is called, we're learning, like, we're listening to Geshe-la's class. Maybe some of you may have some books, additional books that you're reading, other teachings. That's wisdom of learning. The first one is learning. Then you reflect on it. Does it make sense? Like I gave the example, if I say 2 + 3 is equal to 7, you learn what I said and then you scrutinize it. Then you say, no, it doesn't make sense. Maybe he meant something else. Maybe he meant, you can ask me, so something like that. And then if I say 2 + 3 equal to 5, then you can scrutinize it and say, yes, it makes sense, right? So, and then you meditate. Meditation in Sanskrit means bhavna. Bhavna in Hindi has a different connotation. There are people from India who are listening, and then in Tibetan it's called gom. Gom, literal translation is transformation or familiarization. Familiarization is the translation for gom. And bhavna, the root word is bhav. Bhav is to become. So meditation does not mean to just quieten your mind and sit at one place. Meditation can be very active form of meditation, like what it means by ultimate reality, what it means by compassion, what it means by suffering, looking at the causes. Why do I feel in a certain situation angry? What are the demerits of anger? What are the merits of, my being compassionate? What are the benefits that I myself get? There you are just not quietening the mind. Okay. And then Geshe-la quickly revised what we did in the earlier class, 3 principal parts, which I already covered: renunciation, bodhisattva, and wisdom of emptiness. Renunciation, like I mentioned, it is the motivation to get rid of one's own suffering and its causes. Not only suffering, causes is also very important. Right? If I want to get rid of my headache due to my stomach infection, I have to get rid of not only the headache, but I have to get rid of my stomach infection, the cause of it also. Okay. It doesn't mean, this is again a very naive understanding that we come to Buddhism, renunciation means I have to renounce everything. And Geshe-la spent quite a lot of time there that, it does not mean to renounce our happiness. We have to study properly what suffering is. We have to study properly what are the causes of suffering. And then, we'll understand the meaning of renunciation, right? So we should not come with our preloaded concepts about renunciation. Like, for example, in many classes, Geshe-la says, nobody comes to these teachings and say, Geshe-la, I'm very happy. Take my happiness. Please remove my happiness, right? We don't say that. Often when we come to these courses, we have some problems and we're looking for solution to the problems. So let's be very practical and let's be very honest to ourselves, right? That it's not about self-denial or giving up happiness, right? And then Geshe-la quickly touched that happiness, there are 2 types. One, like he gave an example of, like, you have a drink mixed with a sedative. So you enjoy the drink like a juice, but then it will knock you off, right? So, there is something called uncontaminated happiness, and we'll discover in our course what it means. For now, it's like, let's take it that we are hearing for the first time there is something called uncontaminated happiness. Okay. And then a very important question that, okay, you're talking about miseries, you're talking about 0% miseries, then how do I renounce miseries? How do I get rid of it? A wise person will look for the causes, right? For example, like I gave the example, which is a simple example, that if you have some kind of infection, get your blood test done. If required, get some tests done. And you know that you have infection somewhere, and you know that a certain antibiotic will work most effectively, which is called a blood culture or whatever culture, right? You can do a culture report of whatever it is. Like somebody has a urine infection, you do a culture of the urine and you come to know what particular bacteria you're talking about and what is the sensitivity of antibiotics, right? So you should know the causes and you should know what are the antidotes against those causes, right? Or in medical terms, you can say you should know what your disease is and what are the medicines for it. Okay. And then it's not only about the causes, like causes can be multiple. Like, okay, I got stomach infection because I ate stale food, right? And then stale food because of XYZ reason, because of this, because of this. Then you can track it to the ultimate cause. There's something called the ultimate cause. If you get rid of the ultimate cause, then you are sure shot that you will never get the problem again. Okay. All right. And then Geshe-la just spoke about this, and I mentioned it in my slide that he spoke about the 4 misconceptions, which we'll cover later in the classes. But this is Geshe-la's style, that when he teaches, he will give like a trailer to things which is coming in the course. Right. So he mentioned about 4 misconceptions in this particular class, but he did not elaborate those 4 misconceptions. We'll cover that later. And it's quite important because in the Theravada, and other types of Buddhism also, this is mentioned, so we'll cover later. Okay. And the most important ultimate cause is ignorance. And ignorance, I'm not talking about any general ignorance, right? For example, Valeria gave an answer to me. I don't know which city she's joining me from, right? Or joining this class from. I have no idea. That's also an ignorance. But here we are talking about a specific type of ignorance, which we have to learn and we have to identify, and how wisdom of emptiness is the correct medicine for that particular ignorance. Okay. So here, to get rid of our ignorance, Buddha turned the wheel of dharma. This is often like metaphorically said that he turned the wheel of dharma. And when he turned the wheel of dharma, he taught like 4 schools, right? It's not, again, these are terms that we will learn often again and again. The 4 schools, 4 Buddhist schools. Okay. So the 4 Buddhist schools are Vaibhashika, which we covered last time also, Sautantrika, Chittamatra, and Madhyamika. Okay, and then in English, often like the translations will vary. Vaibhashika sometimes is translated the Great Exposition School, the Great Exposition. Sautantrika is like the Sutra followers. Chittamatra is mind only. Madhyamika or Madhyamaka is the middle way school. Okay, so these are often you will hear, and like I said, these are technical words, Sanskrit words. Any foreign language can be a little overwhelming. You will hear it again and again. You have to put effort to be attentive, listen, and if possible, at least read one more time, and you will hear again and again, and you will get familiar. Okay, that's how it works. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. Okay, so now Geshe-la goes into 4 Noble Truths. Buddha's first teaching, like the 3 turnings of the wheel of dharma that we covered earlier, we've not covered the 3rd turning because Geshe-la said he needs more concepts. We'll cover it later. But the first turning, where Buddha taught 4 Noble Truths exist truly. What are 4 Noble Truths? We're going to learn. What does it mean by truly? We will learn later, not in this class, much, much later. What does it mean by truly? So when Buddha taught 4 Noble Truths exist truly, what do you mean by 4 Noble Truths? There, Buddha taught on the basis of 12 recitations or 12 repetitions. These 12 recitations are, he taught 3 sets. Each set has 4. So 4 into 3 becomes 12. So these are called 12 recitations, 12 recitations into 3 groups. Okay. So we will quickly cover what are the 3, so 4 Noble Truths. I'll quickly say, maybe we do the first set and automatically the 4 Noble Truths gets covered. The first one is Buddha just identified what 4 Noble Truths are. What are the 4 Noble Truths? The 4 Noble Truths are, if you see the first set is the teaching on the 4 Noble Truths, but the 3 sets are, first let's do the 3 sets, pertaining to the identification, pertaining to the practice, and pertaining to the results. These are the 3 sets. Okay. So the pertaining to the identification, when you cover pertaining to identification, you automatically know what the 4 Noble Truths are. The 4 Noble Truths are pertaining to identification. This is the truth of suffering. Buddha just said this. This is the truth of suffering. Then the second point within the set, Buddha said, this is the truth of cause of suffering. Then he said, this is the truth of cessation of suffering. And then he said, this is the truth of path leading to the cessation. Arya Maitreya, the future Buddha, in one of his texts, he gave a very beautiful example that 4 noble truths can be understood. We are sick people. Let's say I'm sick and I go to the doctor. Doctor first identifies my problem. That this is your problem. This is the first one, truth of suffering. And doctor says, okay, Dipesh, you have this problem because of this infection. Doctor is identifying the cause of suffering. Then, of course, I can get worried. Doctor, is it curable? Will I be cured? Is the cure possible? Do you have medicine? Yes, it's possible. So this is the cessation of suffering, right? And then I say, how? The doctor say, okay, you have to take this, you have to take this. If there are other things that I need to take, avoid this food, avoid this, avoid that. And let's say if I have some, infection in my leg or injury, you need to rest. Other instructions are also given. That is the path leading to the cessation. Okay, so it's very logical the way Buddha taught. Like, a sick person goes to the doctor. This is a very beautiful analogy that Arya Maitreya did in one of the texts, about the 4 noble truths. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. Okay, and the second set, once I know, okay, these are the 4 noble truths, what am I supposed to do? I'm supposed to practice it, right? So it's related to the practice. The truth of the suffering is to be identified, right? Makes sense. I need to identify what my problems are. The truth of cause of suffering is to be abandoned. I have to get rid of the cause. If I keep cultivating cause, then the suffering will keep arising. The truth of cessation of suffering to be actualized. That I have to actualize the suffering. I have to reach a state where I'm free of suffering. The truth of the path of cessation is to be meditated upon. Like I mentioned, meditation is familiarization. That I have to familiarize my mind so much that my mind becomes like free of suffering completely and its causes. Okay. Then the third set. We have to understand in various connotation, but I'll just read. It's related to the practice, but then additional line is added. Although the truth of suffering is to be identified, there is nothing to be identified. I'll explain it quickly. I'll repeat. Although the truth of suffering is to be identified, there is nothing to be identified. Although the cause of suffering is to be abandoned, there is nothing to be abandoned. Although the truth of cessation is to be actualized, there is nothing to be actualized. Although the truth of path of the cessation is to be meditated upon, there is nothing to be meditated upon. Don't get confused. I'll explain. This is related to the result. Okay. So how you can understand it? Next slide, please. Okay. So how you can understand it probably we'll cover in the next class. But right now we are just doing we are just listing the 12 repetitions. We listed the 12 repetitions and the 3 types of suffering, manifest what Buddha did. This is quite important. So probably I think I'll take another 10 minutes and then we'll go into question answers because this is important. This is the last point. So Buddha, when we say suffering, we again have our own understanding, right? That when we feeling mentally low or we have illness, separation of loved ones, we have, I think in this batch, probably there are only 1 or 2 people who are less than 15. Almost all or majority are 30 plus. There are few in the 20s, but majority participants are 30 years plus. So when you are that age, you have seen some of it. And some of you, even younger ones, would have seen much of it, right? Depends on your life. So we identify, Buddha identified suffering at 3 levels. Suffering of suffering, which is also called manifest suffering or evident suffering. Something that even animals can identify. Any physical, mental pain that we dislike, we'll call it suffering, right? It's a straightforward thing. Buddha is not disagreeing. Buddha is going a little deeper. There's something called suffering of change. And we'll talk about it, what suffering of change is. And then Geshe-la made a very sweeping statement that whatever our mundane happinesses are, they're all suffering of change. And the third type of suffering is pervasive conditioned suffering. Right? So first one, I need not go in detail, but the second one, Geshe-la spent quite a lot of time, and you would see Geshe-la's style in the class is very interactive. You know, he's interacting with people and trying to ask questions, activate people's thinking. So he was asking about suffering of change. So there are 2 points there, or 2 labels within the whole thing, suffering and suffering of change. Right? So one, you know, is suffering. So Geshe-la spent like quite a lot of time. So, you know, anybody like to volunteer and share, like if it's not too personal, any kind of like thing that makes somebody happy. Let's say if I say, maybe if not, cheesecake is a good example, right? So how many people would say they like cheesecake? I can see many smiles already. Yeah, cheesecake. Okay, all right. Cheesecake. I'm just flipping through all the videos to see, and if you can raise your hand. Yeah, okay. So majority would agree to cheesecake. All right. So is there anybody who doesn't like cheesecake that I need to change the example? Anyone who doesn't like cheesecake? Feel free, right? We have our own taste. We have our own choices, right? So anyone who doesn't like cheesecake? Okay. I don't see anybody. Okay. So cheesecake is universal. Okay. I grew up in India. I had my first cheesecake probably when I was in my late 20s or early 30s, right? So anyway, but cheesecake is a universal example. Okay, good enough. Maybe if there are people, I didn't notice your hands, if cheesecake is not your type, you change the object that you think that you like. Let's do it like this. Okay, whatever. So now, if I say, okay, Geshe-la gave the example of momos, but let's say, I don't know how many slices, Tatiana, you know, or maybe somebody can tell me that how many, like let's say there's a 1 kg of cheesecake, how many slices would be there? Maybe about 8, 12? Would that be a fair number? Anyone who's like an expert in cheesecake and eating a lot of cheesecake? Anyone? Right? So let's say it's about 12, right? 12 slices, right? 12 slices in 1 kg. So, so let's say, you know, maybe we get like maybe 4 kg, about 48, 50 slices for you, right? So is it less or is it more? No, is it more? Can somebody have, so 50 slices for sure. I think for majority people, there could be few exceptions who can say they can still manage 50 slices and they still feel they can eat more. But for majority, 50 would be quite a lot. Agreed? Right? And it's a fresh cheesecake from the same batch, from the same chef, same taste. That I can assure you. Right? About 4-5 kgs of cheesecake, 50 slices. So is there any difference between the first slice and the 50th slice? Anyone? In the taste? Anyone? Can somebody raise your hands and let's see? Is there a difference between the first Dalitla? I see a virtual hand.
Yeah, thank you. For me, the first one is the best because then I can test all the things. But if it's all the cake is for me, so the last one is the most important. And if someone of the child or someone else will eat it, it will be awful. It will destroy my day.
I see. So you're saying the first one is the best and the 50th one would be the most awful. Is that what you're saying, Dalatla?
No. If I'm with a lot of people, so the first one, or I just have one, so the first one will be amazing because I can feel all the taste and I really
you're supposed to, sorry, I'm interrupting. You're supposed to eat all 50 slices at one go.
So the last one. The last one is the best.
Last one is the best. I see.
Yeah.
Have you tried it? Please don't try it. Okay. So Dalitla says, okay. I'm not sure about that, Dalitla. I'm not sure. I don't know. With the last one, probably many people will start puking, right? So, okay, let's say
I was born in kibbutz in the children's house.
Huh.
And when we have something, so the last piece was the best.
Okay, sure. Okay, thank you. So let's hear somebody else. You know, so the scenario is 50 slices, standard cheesecake slices that I have seen standard for me. I don't know in your country if cheesecake slice is like big or small. I don't know. Like, you know. But anyway, so you'd get an idea, right? So 50 slices you're eating at one go, right? At one go. Anybody? What would you say difference between the first slice and the 50th slice? Anyone? Please raise your hands. Okay, I see Yolanda Gonza. Yolanda, go ahead, please.
Now, for me, the taste between the first one and the last one is completely different. I think you eat, because I think that if you eat 50, I think that probably is going to be the last cheesecake that you ate in your life. I think I'm going to to be completely no more.
Okay, no more. Okay, all right. Okay, all right. Thank you. Anybody else? So we have two versions. You know, for Dalitla, the last one, you know, is the best. I'm not sure Dalitla has tried this. Yeah, 50 cheesecakes at one go. I'm not sure she's tried it. Yolanda, I do agree. Anybody else would like to share? No? Okay, I don't see any hands. Okay, so maybe last try. Okay, I see Daria March something, you know, Marchenko. Daria Marchenko.
Yeah, good evening. I think first it's better for me, but 50 this last piece I think I feel awful. Yeah, really awful.
Exactly. Okay, so this is a very important point, right? So this I think everybody can relate to, suffering of change, which I think many people just instinctively go, oh, it changes into suffering, right? That you keep having, there's no difference. You have to agree. Let's be very objective. You have to agree from the object, there is no difference whatsoever, right? And all those people, almost all of you who raised hand on the cheesecake, let's say I am the one bringing, you know, this 50 pieces of cheesecake. I had no idea. I was told, okay, it's in the kitchen, bring and serve to this person. And then Legmullah just interrupts me, Dibishla, oh, so sorry, you know, the cheesecake has been lying there for last 7 days, right? This is another scenario, let's say. Then I offer you, Dalitla, you know, all the people, Yolanda La, you know, Daria La, and other people I did not interact with, you know, I offer you. Suddenly what will happen? Now you think that, oh, this cheesecake is like spoiled. You will not even have the first piece. Do you agree? You will not even have the first piece. Once you know it's like 7 days old and it's summertime, it gets spoiled quite easily. Like in a day, it will get spoiled, cheesecake, right? So this is something we have to think about. Is the taste coming from the cheesecake? If it's coming from the cheesecake, then cheesecake should attract me all the time. It's not that the cheesecake I am attracted to, it's the taste, right? The taste I like. And this taste is also not stable. Like after the 50th, like, you know, Yolanda said, this would be the last one I have for the whole life, right? You start feeling sick, you know, your body can't take it. Okay, so it changes. But Buddha is teaching even something more deeper about this, suffering of change. Suffering of change is like a bait which traps us. Now, bait should have this quality which is like, you know, delicious, but yet, you know, it will trap you. So this is the connotation of suffering of change. When you see things as a bait, you know, again, I'll bring up another example. You know, about about 7-8 years ago, I saw an interview on BBC about how much sugar a can of Coca-Cola has, right? So they invited the vice president of Coca-Cola in their studio, BBC, and they were interviewing. They kept a can of Coca-Cola and they kept like many sachets, something like 17, 18 sachets of sugar, something like that. It was like a double-digit number, above 15. I don't know the exact count, but 14, 15 and above. And then they said, we sent your Coca-Cola one can and we found it in the lab. The amount of sugar your Coca-Cola one can has, which is about 330 ml, is these many sachets of sugar. Right? That's amazing. And when I heard this, after that, I think I've never had Coca-Cola. When I saw this, I never had Coca-Cola. Of course, I go to somebody's place and somebody offers and there's nothing else, I'll take it. That's okay, they don't get offended or whatever. Not everything I can take that they don't get offended, but at least I'll try. But willfully, I've never taken it. I stay away, right? So now I know the reality that it's got so much of sugar. Why should I have it? It's so unhealthy. What they're trying to do is basically quite smart and quite mean, that your body goes on a high of a sugar, right? When you digest that sugar, your body goes on low of a sugar. Then you crave for it. When you crave for it, you'll have more, right? So they're doing the smart things. But anyway, it's not kind to us and it's not good, but they're trying to be extra smart. Okay. So this I'm giving an example of a bait. When you see things like this, that okay, now it's got so much of sugar, your mind will change. Right? So the suffering of change is like that. We will cover more in the next class. Yeshla was interacting and Yeshla was asking this. I broke the ice by telling that it's like a bait. It's coming in the next class. Okay. So if you hear what we released today's recording, you will get it, but think about it and we'll have more interaction about it in the next review class. Okay, I'll stop here and then we'll also cover what it means by pervasive condition suffering in the next class. Yeshla did not cover in this class, but we'll cover it. Okay, so I would open our review session for question answers. If anybody has any questions, feel free, not only for the two classes that we released last week or before that, whatever questions that you may have, please feel free. You can raise your physical hand or virtual hand. Legmanda, if you can help me identify hands if I don't notice.
Sure, Divish.
Okay. I see, and I'll try my best to pronounce your name properly, and excuse me if I don't pronounce your name. Bogdanala Ozerlava. I hope I'm pronouncing your name properly. Bogdanala, you have a virtual hand. You can unmute and speak, please.
Дипешла, вы меня спрашиваете, я правильно поняла?
One second. Yeah, Diana, go ahead.
Богдана, да, все правильно,
Yes,
Богдана.
I'm talking to Bogdanala.
Дипешла, у меня такой вопрос о практике, о состоянии нирваны. То есть мы, допустим, достигаем состояния нирваны, а есть ли какая-то определенная практика или мантра, чтобы закрепиться в этом состоянии, чтобы обрести устойчивость?
Okay, thank you, Diana. So people who are not in the Russian channel, and you want to hear what the Russian participant is asking, Diana just translated. What you have to do, you have to keep your channel to English, people who are in the English channel, and keep your slider towards the interpreter. So when Diana is translating back from Russian to English, you will hear it. In case you did not hear the question, I'll repeat it for everybody's benefit. So what Bogdanala asked was that when we reach nirvana, is there some mantra or something that we can stabilize the nirvana? This is the question. Okay. So first, I think we should not have any preconceived notion about what nirvana is. Right? That okay, we reach a certain state and it can be unstable, then we have to stabilize. These are all preconceived notions. During the prayers, if you noticed, Legmilla played the recording of a Heart Sutra mantra. It was not Heart Sutra, it was Heart Sutra mantra. Gate gate, paragate, parasam gate, bodhi swaha. Okay, this is a mantra, and this mantra signifies the 5 paths. Gate is one path, gate, another gate is another path. So what we just discussed in the class, we have to have the 5 paths when we want to reach either personal liberation or Buddhahood. Then it's always good, Bogdanala, to talk about Buddhahood, not Nirvana. Right? It's always good that when we reach Buddhahood, is there a way to stabilize? Maybe we can change your question, right? So it's not that, you know, you reach a state and then it's unstable, you have to stabilize it. When we learn systematically, a bodhisattva is a person, you know, who aspires to become a Buddha. They acquire concentration skills much earlier before Buddhahood, much earlier. Right? Like for example, I gave the example of Venerable Ananda, who one of the texts says that could recollect 65,000 pages of A4 sheet, both sides printed, without error. And in this, all punctuation marks are also perfect. Full stops, commas, dash, spaces, everything perfectly recollected. Can you imagine having this kind of a recollection? Such a stable mind, right? Kind of photographic memory. And yet, Venerable Ananda, when Buddha passed away, did not achieve, Bodhiswa. He did not. Okay, so that's something that we have to learn. What Nirvana is, what are concentration practices, and then mantras. You have to understand the deeper meaning and the concepts behind it. Right? If we follow tantra or something, that's a different thing. But here you have to be very logical. Right? If I am hungry, then Buddha said, go to kitchen and eat food. Don't recite a mantra. Mantra will not fill your stomach. Right? If I'm sick, if I have illness, go to the hospital, see a doctor. Of course, you have the faith element. I'm not saying the faith element should not be there. There are some people having strong faith, have faith, but do logical things also. So similarly, we learn what Nirvana is and what stability of mind practices are, and how one progresses from path. How does one go from gate, paragate, parasam gate, bodhisva? Okay, and then we will know. Okay, yeah. Thank you for your question. Thank you. Maybe we can take the next question. Next question. Maybe let me see any physical hands. I saw Zana, Zanna. Zanala, you have a virtual hand.
Jana.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, please. Sorry. Go ahead.
Добрый день. Я бы хотела задать вопрос. Не совсем поняла. Страдания или явное очевидное страдание? Еще раз, можно более подробно объяснить, что такое первый вид страдания? Спасибо.
Sure. Okay. Thank you for your question. So she's asking about, can some examples be given for suffering or suffering? Suffering or suffering is something that we all identify, Janala. Something like, having headache, some kind of illness, somebody says some angry words and we don't like it, you're having some kind of anxiety about the future, you're worrying about the future, things that you yourself will say, I don't like. Right? Any kind of physical, mental pains that we associate, those are classified as suffering. Right? I'm not sure. Did you raise your hand for the cheesecake? You like cheesecake? Yeah. The cheesecake gives you a smile. That you will not say it's suffering. Right? So that also, the way we see cheesecake at one stage, that is suffering of change. But of course, that doesn't mean that cheesecake itself is suffering. It's a way of seeing things and what we are doing. So, we have to go slow. But, what Yolanda said, that if I'm having the 50th cheesecake, then I will not feel sick and this would be my last cheesecake of life. That at that stage, it has become suffering of suffering already. Okay. All right. So any manifest word in English means that it's very evident to you that it's a suffering. That is suffering of suffering. Okay. All right. Thank you for your question. Okay. We still have time. So, you know, Dalitla, go ahead. You have a virtual hand. Can you go ahead with your question? Yeah.
I just don't understand something. You speak about physical and verbal, but doesn't they control by the mental issue effect? I don't know how to say it in English. Because you said that if you are looking about the physical, so it's one way. If you look about the verbal, it's another way. Then you have the mental. But doesn't the mental control everything?
Of course, mental controls everything. Yeah, of course. You're 100% right. That mental controls everything. 100% right. Okay?
So you mean? So you mean that if you say that, sorry, the physical control the physical is to control the mental physical things? Because
so
I don't understand.
Within your mental, there's a part of mind which dictates your physical action. There's a part of mind which dictates your verbal action. There's a part of mind which dictates your mental action. So the first basket or the first higher training that we were talking was Sheel, ethical discipline. Ethical discipline deals with the mind, but the mind which controls the physical action, the mind which controls the verbal action. Right? So it's training of the mind, it's mental training, but the mind which controls the physical. Right? Okay. Right. Like, for example, the example I gave of my colleague who's very kind-hearted, very soft-spoken, but he often used to say, very good, very good, very good, right? So there was a mind in him that habituated in saying very good. Now, when he faces such a situation that somebody dies, then again he says very good. He regrets it very, very badly that, what did I say? This is not right. He realized it immediately, like in a split second, he realized it, right? So then he has to train his mind that I have to be mindful of not saying very good every time. He has to practice it. That's within the mind. And then at some stage he practices it, then he'll have enough control that I say very good here. I don't have to say very good. Okay, that's the training of the verbal. Like that, physical. Okay, all right. Okay, yeah. Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, let's move on to the next question. We still have a few minutes. You know, we have Vidya Das ji. We have a virtual hand. Vidya Das.
Yeah, namaste.
Namaste.
Yeah, I've been listening to all this with a lot of, effort because it's new and I'm trying to understand, so much to understand. But one of the things is that when you talk of happiness, I can use the example of the cheesecake itself. But no, I'll drop that. My happiness is all right, but when there is suffering outside, when somebody I know is suffering, when a lot of people are suffering, and the cause of suffering is very external to me, what do I do? I mean, even like you see the senseless killing, even in what is happening in different parts of the world. How does one address this?
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Valerie. So first of all, of course, what you said, I relate to it, that when I started, things were new, right? So when things are new, it can be overwhelming. And in my last review class, I gave an example which Geshe-la often gives in his teachings, is that, we consider like two, like sacks, big sacks we have. When you hear so many things, some things you understand, some things you don't understand. So what you understand, you put it in one sack. And what you don't understand, put it in another sack. Don't get overwhelmed. If we feel overwhelmed and we keep feeling overwhelmed, then most likely very soon we will quit. The trick is to focus on the sack where you're understanding things and take joy in it, right? And and then maybe after the class you can have a cheesecake, if the doctor allows you, right? If your health allows you, take a cheesecake, no problem, right? So you enjoy a little bit, and so it will not feel overwhelming. That's my first point. Now, second point is a very serious point and very relevant point that Vidyaji is raising, that okay, there is so much of external suffering. There is senseless killing happening. People can behave. The bombs, with so much of fights, and you open news, it's so negative. Almost 99-98% of time, news is negative, right? How do we handle it? What can we do about it, right? So my answer to it is, number one, maybe we can take with an example first. Let's say if I wanted to become a surgeon, let's say a kid wants to become a surgeon, a kind-hearted kid says, I want to become a surgeon. Maybe I want to do a heart surgeon, or I want to become a brain surgeon, and I want to help people. So most of you would agree that it's not that the kid is out of the high school and can directly go to an operation theater. He or she has to put in hard work, go to a medical school, and like in India, and of course in many Western countries, it's just not doing a bachelor's degree in medicine, right? In India, it's called MBBS, right? So in your country, it may be something else. You do a 4-year course, then you do internship, then you do master's for 2-year course, then again you do surgery, then again you do internship. 15 years are gone before you become a surgeon. Then actually you can help, right? And then again, it's not that, okay, I become like a cardio surgeon and I'm practicing in my city, Delhi. There are remote parts of India where the people are suffering. Let's say I'm a heart surgeon who have heart problems. If they are not connected with me, I can't help them. Either I have to go there or they have to come to me, right? So similarly, there are so many problems in the world. One, we should have the capability to solve the problem. That's number one. Like becoming a surgeon in the example. Second, the connection I'm talking about, the receptivity should be there. Even if you become capable and the receptivity is not there, people will not listen to you. People will not, for example, in today's world, like let's take example of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. He lost his country, right? He says that when he was age of 15, he lost his freedom. At age of 24, he lost his country. Yet, since 1959, it's 41 plus 23 years. It's a pretty long time. He has not got angry even once with the Chinese Communist Party. Not even once. So much of violation has happened, right? So he's wise, he's kind-hearted, he's giving a solution. They will not listen. But he's not given up hope. He says, I'm very hopeful. It's so inspiring if you read his biography, right? So similarly, let's say, two nations are warring. There are some, maybe terrorism going on. There are gun shootings going on in developed countries. Suicides, depression, all kinds of things are going on, right? So one is to develop myself if I really need to, and then I should have some connection and receptivity. Right? So His Holiness is already developed, but is anybody asking him? If he goes there, will they listen to him? So in such cases, at least we can pray. In a heartfelt way, we can pray that may people, and all this is driven by their ignorances. All this is driven by pure ignorance, nothing else. That if they actually see, and then you have a very long-term view. Once, of course, for many of you, you come from different traditions. Like if we are able to logically establish like rebirth, then all these people are creating causes for tremendous suffering for their future rebirths and even this life. tremendous suffering, for sure, right? So then you start feeling, rather than feeling violated, you can feel compassion for them, you know. And it can also become a driving force that this world, the situation is becoming so bad, the number of good people are less, number of kind-hearted people are less. So I need to work on myself. At least let me, and this kind of, this is one of the very inspiring stories I can share, which I find personally very, very inspiring. There is something when Prince Siddharth became Buddha, he used to often share his past lives, that I was so and so in so and so life. So one of the very inspiring stories I find is that he himself said that in one of the lives, he was a parrot, a gray colored parrot. And in the forest that he was living, the forest caught fire. And like you are feeling, you know, he felt, as a parrot, he felt tremendous compassion for all the animals burning. He said, what can I do? Even a parrot, right? So he flew to the nearest pond and he would fill his beak with water and he would sprinkle on the jungle. It was a vast jungle. Now, practically speaking, a parrot trying to douse a fire, a jungle which is so vast, will not have much impact, right? But the resolve that I can do whatever I can do, I want to do. And then Buddha says that because of this kindness that he did, in immediate next life, instead of a gray colored parrot, he was born as a very colorful parrot because of this act of compassion. So I personally find it extremely inspiring when I feel like overwhelming situations. I remember the story of Buddha, that be like that gray parrot. Do whatever you can. At least from your side, you will not have regret. And that is enough for the time being. When you become so powerful, when when we learn, when we go on this path of gate gate, paragate, parasambhuti, you know, the idea is to become Buddha. But on the path, you get these powers automatically as a side effect, as positive side effect, not negative. Then you can do quite a lot. And then one of the powers you will also have is the ability to see people's mind, whether they're receptive or not receptive. Where to speak, where to intervene, where not to speak. You will get all these powers. Okay. So that is what I would say. Practically speaking, we can, and then not only prayers, maybe there are some charities that we can online donate. Maybe, you know, if you are on social media, we can speak up against this, that I'm against war, I'm against violence. Maybe, you know, at your age, if there are youngsters in your family, we can teach them that, you know, not have violent views, be kind-hearted. Maybe the next generation will learn this. So these are all the things which are in our hand, right? So this parrot story is quite inspiring. And then to wisely see, okay, what you can do. What is my beak size and what is water in this situation? That you have to analyze. Even if you can change like one or two people who have these violent views, you know, not towards nations, but each other, and they can talk, like if they have a disconnect with each other and they can talk to each other, have a dialogue, solve it, you are working at your level, right? Yeah. Okay. Thank you for your question. Thank you. I'll take the last question. I think Shraddha Rai ji was raising her hand. That would be the last question. Shraddha Rai, if you're still there. Yeah, go ahead. You will have to unmute, Shraddha ji. You're still muted. Click on the
Yeah. Actually, I wanted to know about the course because I'm a bit confused. I'm sorry. Like, the thing is, I missed out on the second live class because I was traveling. I couldn't reach home on time. But I mean, like, we are having live classes per week once. And then are there any other teachings that I'm missing out in a week? I'm like a bit confused, actually.
Okay. That's a logistical question. I'll repeat. So this course, NCC2, is the first one where we're using recordings of Venerable Geshe-la. Okay, Shraddha ji? Okay. So what happens is, because Geshe-la's schedule is very tight, if we would have waited for Geshe-la to get free and then we launch NCC2, then it would have never happened. So we discussed this with Venerable Geshe-la. So we decided that Geshe-la, the same topics you've taught many times in Nalanda courses, So we can design a course where we take recordings from the previous courses. So every Monday we release 2 recordings. Like today we release 2 recordings which will be reviewed in the next class, next Monday class. So the live classes are review classes. Besides that, whatever topics we have, it's not that everything will be covered by recording. There are few topics that Geshla will teach directly and will announce. Like what we do, we decide the schedule on a monthly basis. So the schedule for January is decided. By this week, we will know Geshla's travel plans and other things. So schedule for February will be decided. So we'll have live classes with Geshla for certain topics. Plus, in addition, we have requested Geshla, which he has agreed, that we'll have monthly question answer sessions. Like I'm doing a question answer, we'll have it directly with Geshla, monthly question answer. Okay, but it depends on his schedule. He's too busy, so we can't commit right now, but we are trying our best that in February we get 1 slot, from his travel plans and other things. So that we'll announce. Okay, all right. So best is, I think, we make an announcement. When we make an announcement, the email goes out to everybody, whoever is registered. But these emails are automated the system. So probably it's going into your spam folder. And if you're using Gmail, there's something called social tab, promotions tab, it goes there. So once you receive the email, add it to your contacts. So next time it doesn't go to spam or these other tab folders. So you will come to know. Today we released the recording and we made an announcement. And if you still don't get emails, go to the portal and check the announcements. You will see all the announcement at one place and you will get to know. Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much. We'll do a quick dedication before we say bye. Legmila, if you can share the dedication. And, Legmila can do the dedication.
Okay, thank you, Dipeshla. So we'll lead the dedication prayer. I dedicate the merit thus gathered toward the realization of the deeds and the prayers of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 3 times, and to the upholding of the doctrine of scripture and insight. May I in all lives, through the force of this merit, never separate from the 4 wheels of Mahayana vehicle, and accomplish all the stages of the path: renunciation, bodhicitta, perfect view, and the 2 stages. From my 2 collections, vast space that I have amassed from working with effort at this practice for a great length of time, may I become the chief leading Buddha of all those whose mind's wisdom is blinded by ignorance. Thank you, everyone.
Legmila, we have to recite the Heart Sutra mantra 3 times.
Okay. Teata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasam Gate Buddhi Swaha Tyata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasam Gate Buddhi Swaha Tyata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasam Gate Buddhi Swaha. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for attending today's class. Thank you, Dipeshla. Thank you, Tatiana La. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Diana La.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Have a good week.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Благодарю.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Благодарю.
Thank you.
Thank you.